Alex, I think we're live, so over to you, Alex.
Perfect. Thanks, Camilla. And welcome, everyone. We're excited to be the first panel of the day, focusing on the transition from high school to university. I'll be the moderator today. My name is Alexandra Schroeder, and I've been involved with WCM for years as a volunteer. And this is maybe my third or fourth year helping out with Job Shadow Day and WCM SheBiz. So with me, we have 5 students who are all in university at schools across the country who have lots of insights and are excited to share some of them with you today. So starting off, why don't we have each of you ladies please tell the audience your name, where you grow up, what university you're at, what program you're in, and what year of study you're in currently. Dasney, why don't you start?
All right, thanks, Alex. So my name is Jasny. I'm currently a third-year student, and I'm in the Math and Business Dual Degree program at Waterloo and Laurier. I'm super excited to be here because I actually went to SheBiz when I was in grade 9, and I've been involved with WCM since then, and they're a great organization. So I grew up in Toronto, and yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks. Donay, why don't you go next?
All right, so my name's Donay. I grew up in Calgary, and I'm actually at U of C right now. I'm in my 5th year of a combined degree in international business and economics.
Great. Rachel, off to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. I actually grew up in Europe, lived in England and Switzerland before moving to Vancouver Island about 8 years ago. And I currently am a 4th-year business student at the University of Victoria on Vancouver Island.
Thank you. Kate?
Hey, everyone. My name is Kate. I grew up in Ajax, Ontario, which is just east of Toronto. I'm currently in my 3rd year at Western, and in my first 2 years I studied economics, and I'm currently in my 1st year at the Ivy Business School.
Perfect. And Natasha?
Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha. I grew up in Montreal, and I'm currently a 4th-year student at McGill University. I'm studying finance with a minor in information systems.
Perfect. Wow, we for sure have a diverse panel today. And really interesting to note, as you probably heard, we have WCM SheBiz and Job Shadow Day alumni in the panel today. So for everyone listening in, this could be you in 3-4 years. So starting off, Dasney, why don't you share why you chose your school and particular program?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was in high school, one thing I heard was that employers and capital markets were really valuing STEM students and those STEM skills more and more. So I heard about the dual degree program, which is a math degree on Waterloo and then a business degree at Laurier side. And I know Waterloo is a great school for math and computing, and I really liked learning math in high school. I also liked the co-op program, and Laurier is a great business school. So I thought the program kind of brought in the best of both worlds.
Perfect. And on that note, Kate, can you shed some light on why you chose your program? Did you always want to go into finance?
Yeah, for sure. No, I didn't always know I wanted to go into finance. That's just something I figured out when I got into my 1st year at Western, just through extracurriculars and courses. And then in terms of how I decided to go to Ivy, when I was in grade 12 before starting the university application process, I considered what I wanted to get out of a university experience. And I encourage you all to have this conversation with yourself and with your parents. And I realized there were 3 things I wanted to get out of university. First being, I wanted to join a fun and friendly community so I can make a lot of friends after graduation. Number 2, I wanted to take courses that focused on theory, but also practical application. I know in high school, the courses that I really enjoyed was when I could learn stuff, but also learn how to apply it rather than just memorizing theories or formulas. And then the last thing was I wanted to go to a reputable business school that had partnerships with some of the top firms in consulting and finance. And I thought the Ivy Business School offered me all 3 of those things.
Perfect. And you're in your third year there, 1st year of business school? Got it. Now that we have some insight on a few of your school and degree program choices, let's move a little bit and chat about what preparation is needed to be done in high school in order to be successful and accepted into some of these programs. Rachel, why don't you share what courses were needed for your degree? You're at UVic currently in commerce. That's right.
Yeah, so in business in general across Canada, when you look at a university website, they'll always tell you and recommend the math course for your province. So in my case, in British Columbia, it's called Pre-Calculus 11 and 12, and English is also a required course. The one tip I would give everyone today is that you often have the option to take an advanced or higher level course. And I was fortunate enough to take the International Baccalaureate program in my high school. And all of those sort of advanced placements, higher level classes are the equivalent of a university course. So they really teach you the important time management skills and even the fundamental skills that you need to be really successful in your first year. And even though at the time I found it really stressful at moments and even thought, can I really do this higher level course? It was probably the best decision I made because it made my first year of university and my whole degree so much less stressful at the end of it. So highly recommend those higher level courses.
That's great advice. It sounds like even though it might be more challenging or hard in the moment, it's important to have that longer term view and figure out, is this going to help me get towards my goal, even though, it might feel a bit of a stressful situation or the harder route while in high school.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does anyone have a comment about the courses you'd recommend taking generally for the STEM degree? I know, Donna, you had a few thoughts about that one.
Yeah, again, I guess just building off of what Rachel said, whatever province you're in, if there's like a higher level math class, that's almost guaranteed to be one of your first year classes that you have to take. And like she said, it might seem hard in the moment, but definitely it'll make at least one of your classes in your first year a whole lot easier. And if your high school is lucky enough to offer some business courses, those ones are always great to take as well because they do just teach you some really good skills in general.
It sounds like the big trend is, for no matter what, if it's a business degree or if it's a business combined with math or science, everyone's, looking for you to stay in those math and science courses in high school to really keep as many options available for when applying to schools and universities. That kind of sound about right? Perfect. So moving gears, talking about the transition a little bit more. Despite the location change for many who are going to school away from their hometown, the independence, the increased workload, the increased and new social circle, there's a lot to take in your first year. And really what we want to chat about a little bit is if some of you could provide some color as to what was the hardest part of that transition to university for you? And is there a way that hardest part could have been made easier? Are there any tools you suggest the students listening today could use if they face those obstacles? Natasha, can we start with you for this one?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, the transition was not as drastic since I stayed in my hometown for school. But there was still a big adjustment because the university workload was way more than I expected. So I had to kind of get used to balancing everything. So that's like studying, social life, extracurriculars, and also kind of job hunting. So my advice after having gone through it is really to not try to do everything in your first year. You have 4 years to try like these clubs and activities. So like they're not running away. So like don't force yourself to try everything. I feel like for me, when doing that, it kind of like trying to do everything, I just kind of couldn't do everything as well as I was hoping. So my advice is really to learn how to prioritize, and balance is really key. So if you find out early enough like what your goals and priorities are, you'll be able to strike a better balance between like achieving your goals while also enjoying your social life.
That's great advice. And Rachel, when we were chatting last week in preparation for the panel, you mentioned something that really resonated with me, and that was, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Can you maybe elaborate on what that means to you and why it's so vital and and relevant in this transition period from high school to university?
Being uncomfortable or being comfortable with being uncomfortable is really the most important lesson I have gained and learned over my university degree. And often it's because when you come out of high school, you have your friend group, you have your ideas of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And in university, there are a lot of situations that are really, really new. So something for me was, the options and all the classes that you can take, and the opportunities to talk with business professionals and to attend events that we refer to as networking events. It's something like this, where you just meet people and you talk with strangers, essentially. And at the beginning of my degree, I thought, I never want to do that. That seems so awkward. But at the end of the day, it was the best way to learn. And so sometimes you do have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, say yes to things that you may have never considered. In high school, I never considered going into finance. And it was really through those networking events that I chose to pursue this career. So my biggest advice is to say yes and push yourself to enjoy those uncomfortable situations at times.
Definitely. And it only puts you in a better position for when as you guys go into the working world in a few years, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable situations. So the earlier you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, the better, and more practice you'll have in, managing those stressful or, uncomfortable situations. All right. So, Dasni, I think we're going to go to you next. Can you shed some light on how the students listening today can get started? Where can they learn more about the transition? How do you start networking? What resources might be available to them that they might not realize are at their fingertips?
Yeah, okay. So I think I'm going to say there's 4 different people or resources you can reach out to. So the first I would say is your family and any family friends you have. So for example, if you are curious about the banking industry and you have an aunt who works at a bank, reach out to her and say, hey, I want to learn more. And even if she doesn't work in the specific department that you're interested in, she might know someone who does, or someone at another bank. So leverage the people you already know, and they're kind of willing to help you out through that through that process of initially getting building your network. And then on that note, I would say also reach out to your teachers in your school. So if there's a business teacher that they might know some alumni, they might know people in the industry, and they might be able to actually point you to resources as well. Third, I would recommend creating a LinkedIn account, because what's great about LinkedIn is you can actually search for people in a specific industry or organization or with a specific job title. And with that, you can actually just send them a cold message and reach out to them in that way. So you can just Google how to send a cold message, and there's some great tips on how to get started with that. And the last thing I would say is just broaden your finance knowledge. And you can do this just on YouTube. So I use Crash Course and Investopedia, and they have some great videos for all different levels of people. So if you want to know what is an equity, you can just YouTube it, and that way when you go into those networking events and coffee chats, you kind of have that knowledge and the language is already familiar to you.
That's great. Thanks, Dasni. And on that same topic, Natasha, would you mind providing a bit of color on the networking process, what students approaching university can expect, any advice you have on, practicing networking or where to get started?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest thing is being aware of the networking events that are happening. So there's so many available at every school. So you have to make sure to, for example, if you're interested in finance, right, you can follow the finance club on social media, and they will post about the events they have. So that's a great way to stay updated. Also, there's also the career services team. So at McGill, I'm not sure how it works in other schools, but our career services team sends us a weekly newsletter, and that every week they highlight opportunities and events that are coming up. So that's also a great source when you want to know what's happening and you want to see what kind of opportunities are available for you. And then when it comes to networking itself, it's really just like any other skill. It really takes practice. I know for a lot of people, it seems really awkward and unnatural at first. So for me, how I got started was I went to some of those events with a friend, so that at least I had someone that I was more comfortable with, instead of having to do it all alone. So definitely, if you're feeling a bit stressed and scared, definitely try it with a friend. And then I was actually very surprised to find out that a lot of people struggle with networking at first. Like I thought I was the odd one out and that everyone had it figured out. But a lot of us are just trying until we make it. So for sure, you just have to put yourself out there. And also another thing I learned is that you're not necessarily going to click with everyone. Like that doesn't mean you're not good at networking. Everyone's just different. So as long as you keep putting yourself out there and trying, you'll be fine. It's really just practice.
That's great advice. As you said, it's like a muscle. You got to keep working it before it gets stronger, and just repetition. Looking back a few years to when you guys were in first year university, what is one piece of advice you would give students entering the university chapter of their careers? Kate, why don't you start with that one?
Sure. So I think the one piece of advice I would give my high school self is do your research and be aware of what opportunities and what programs there are available to you. I know like in the next few years, you'll have to make a lot of big decisions about what university you want to go to, what career you want to pursue after that, where you want to work, things like that. So there's no reason you have to kind of take that decision as a shot in the dark and not consult anyone or not do your research. So for example, when I was back in high school, I joined WCM, Western Women in Capital Markets, and I went to the job shadow day, started networking at their events, and I also got a mentor. And so doing all of those things helped me realize I wanted to go into finance. And then in high school, I also went to the Ivy Summer Leadership Program, which helped me know that I wanted to go to the Ivy Business School. And so I encourage all of you to do your research and figure out what opportunities and programs there are out there to help you make those big decisions in life, because they are out there and oftentimes they go unnoticed.
And I think also just building off of what Kate said, because there are so many decisions you have to make, I think one thing that I learned was it's okay if you change your mind or your plans change. When I was in high school, I decided I wanted to go to St. Francis Xavier University out in Nova Scotia. I did 1 year there, and then I decided I wanted to transfer to U of C. And in the moment, it seemed like the end of the world, or I made so many mistakes, but it actually led me to being in the degrees that I'm in now, and also finding women in capital markets. So everything does kind of seem to happen for a reason, whether you believe it or not in the moment.
That's great advice. And Kate mentioned, how she became interested in capital markets and finance in general. Rachel, I know you had an interesting transition for when you were maybe going in the medical direction and then realized the world of capital markets exists. Do you mind sharing that story and what it was that turned you in the direction of capital markets?
Definitely. I was considering dentistry up until grade 12. I thought that was really my planned course. And I was fortunate enough to be selected to join the Coast Capital Savings Youth Intern Program, which is for grade 11 and grade 12 high school students. And if you're in British Columbia, you may have the opportunity to participate. There are also similar intern programs in high school. And in that program, I got to work in the branch and do financial services. And that was really my first exposure to investments. And I thought, looking at how investments work, that really interests me. So what could I do to, maybe work in that field? And it was really because of that program that I decided to look into capital markets in about my first or second year. Before that, I had no idea what the term even meant. So if you're in the same boat as me, don't worry about it, because there are so many avenues that you could choose, and you may go down one, which for me was the branch in financial services. And from there, I chose to look more into capital markets.
Appreciate that color. Thanks, Rachel. And I think we have a few minutes left here, so we're going to ask one more question to two of our panelists, and we'll leave you with your next session. And that would maybe be for Dasney. Let's start with you. When you were in high school, what hobbies, aspects, courses even, were most beneficial to you in university looking back now?
I think when I was in high school, I was a competitive figure skater. And I guess like in university, I stopped doing that because I was far away from my skating club, but I still went skating recreationally. And with that, I met a lot of students who weren't in my program, and they were just very different kinds of students from the ones I would normally meet. And I'm really glad I made those relationships because although it's important to have friends in your program that you can kind of talk to about coursework, it's also important to have friends in university that you don't talk about school at all and you actually talk about other things. So today I really cherish those relationships. And also I really appreciate that I had kind of a physical activity going in to take care of myself physically as well, which is something that a lot of students easily neglect once they get into university. So I'm really glad I had that going in, because if I didn't, I might not have made those friends or actually did physical activity to the extent that I did.
Thank you. And Natasha, what about you? What aspects from high school, looking back, were the most beneficial to you, or clubs or whatnot?
Yeah, so for me, it was a bit different because in Quebec, we have like an intermediate step after high school, which is like CEGEP. And that could be considered the equivalent of like grade 12 and 13. And so the kind of courses I took there that were really useful were just intro to business kind of courses. So that gave me a really good overview of many different fields in business. Particularly useful classes were economics, since economics will most likely be part of your degree. So it's really good to have like a good intro knowledge. As for extracurriculars, there were a lot of options available to me at my CEGEP. And so I kind of just joined some that I was interested in, but a few that stood out to me is Model UN. I think that's a really great way to meet new people and also just to develop your speaking skills and be more comfortable with presenting, which is definitely a skill that's very useful in business school. And another one is just like student leadership positions, like being on the council or I don't know, be an ambassador for your school. So those kinds of things can really help you also like meet new people and just become more comfortable.
Definitely. And I'm sure while in university, the clubs you've joined are a reflection of, those hobbies and those traits that you've developed through high school. And maybe last question, we'll ask Kate this one, and really just this new virtual world we're living in. You guys will be, one of the first starting university in the virtual world, and it's all a new challenge we're all navigating together. Kate, why don't you provide, a few tips or recommendations to navigating a transition in the virtual world? Not that you've had to go from high school to university, but this year entering, first year of Ivy, not being able to do in person 100%. Any recommendations on how to make the most of it, even though it might be more challenging and, a muscle you haven't flexed in the past?
Yeah, kind of even taking a step back from before you're in university. To my understanding, I don't think the university application process should be much different for you guys in high school. I think the main difference will be you won't be able to go in person to campuses to kind of see what's going on and interact with people. And so you should definitely continue to do your research. I'm sure all the universities will have virtual campus tours and ways for you to learn about the program. So wouldn't worry too much about that. But once you are in university, I'd say biggest piece of advice is treat it like you're in person in your lectures. I know it's really easy to go on your phone or like go on YouTube, social media, other stuff. So as long as you stay engaged in whatever you're doing, whether that's in lectures or extracurriculars, you just treat it like you're in person. And so I try to act like there isn't a physical barrier of a screen between me and my friends when we're having discussions, that sort of thing.
Love it. Thank you. So thank you all for listening.
You know what, Alex? I'm just going to jump in with one more question. I was listening in the background, and all of your advices and comments were really so incredible. But there's kind of one thing that I'm curious, and I think some of the students watching might be curious about. Can each of you just kind of run through your very favorite thing about the university experience you're living, even in the midst of COVID? I think a lot of them would love it. And I know it's complicated with a panel here, but maybe we'll start with you, Desney.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing has been just kind of the way you make friends online is a lot different, and I think it's a lot more casual because you're not really in a formal learning environment. So because of that, I'm able to bond with people in a different way and just make friends differently. And I've really appreciated some of those relationships I've made despite COVID. So that's something I've really enjoyed this past online term.
What about you, Dooney?
I think for me, it's as weird as it sounds, it's almost given me the opportunity to make more connections because we are all at home and we're kind of, it's easier to talk online than it is to driving to meet up with someone. So a lot of like my professors, I find that sometimes if I wasn't able to make office hours because I had to be in another class, now it's easier to almost set up times where we can just have a Zoom meeting or get help with projects. And a lot of my in-class projects with my teams, it's easier for us to find times where we're all available, which is kind of unique to being online. And it sounds like it shouldn't work, but it does.
It's so good to hear. Rachel?
I'm going to take a step back pre-COVID. My favorite thing, since I'm almost at the end of my degree, has been my international exchange semester, which feels just so strange to mention now. But when you have the opportunity to meet international students, to go to a different country for 4 months, do it. It's so incredible. And again, it's something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, which has been kind of the lesson of my degree. And so if you ever see that on a university poster that they give you maybe the opportunity to study in Spain, definitely look into it.
I can look forward to getting on a plane, that's for sure. What about you, Kate?
I gotta say for me, my favorite experience about university has been internships. I feel like I've been itching to get my hands on like actual projects and get into a workplace since high school to see what kind of life you live in the capital markets. And so internships have given me the opportunity to do that and to grow as a professional, which is really exciting.
Okay, Natasha, close us out here with some last words.
Yeah, so for me, the best thing was really the extracurriculars. There are just so many different activities and clubs that are available to you on campus that you can join pretty much like any sort of club. For example, one of my favorite clubs, we have this chocolate club at McGill, and we just do events related to chocolate. And like I'm part of that club. So it just shows you that there's really something for everyone and that it's totally okay to branch a bit out of finance and really to take this time to like meet different people and just try like different things out.
You guys are so amazing. I love all the advice and the positivity. I can see that all 5 of you are going to follow in Alex's footsteps and have a really fabulous career in capital markets. I'm so thrilled you could join us. And for all of you watching in high school, I hope our students have kind of opened your eyes to all the different routes and all the different pathways that really lead to a really interesting university experience. And with that, we're giving you our first 10-minute break. So you have 10 minutes to do some homework, get a snack, and then we'll meet you back right here at 1:20 Eastern. So that's 10 minutes from now. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.